My dad caught on pretty quick. I think he just felt the energy, and he would like kind of tease me the same way that he would tease my brothers.
Paris Jackson steps forward and the carefully constructed fantasy of Neverland begins to crumble. For years, she remained silent, a quiet keeper of her father's complicated legacy. But a recent, tearful interview has shattered that silence. She's not just sharing memories.
The film panders to a very specific section of my dad's fandom that still lives in the fantasy.
It's not real, but it's sold to you as real.
She is finally addressing the whispers that have haunted the 2,700-acre ranch for years. She is taking us inside the main house, beyond the theme park rides and the zoo, to a place of secrets, a place even she was kept away from. The thing nobody tells you is that the real mystery wasn't the ranch, but what was hidden inside its walls. Beyond the Ferris wheel. For most of us, Neverland was a myth, a place that shouldn't exist in the real world, nestled in the rolling hills of California. It was a staggering 2,700 acres of pure imagination. Think about that for a second. That's over 4 square miles. It was a kingdom larger than some towns, all dedicated to one man's vision. And what a vision it was. Michael Jackson didn't just buy a ranch, he poured an estimated $35 million into transforming it into a living fantasy. We're talking a full-scale amusement park with a Ferris wheel, a pirate ship ride, and a merry-go-round. He had a 50-seat movie theater with its own candy store where you could get anything you wanted for free. He even built his own private fire department. But the worst part is the sheer cost of keeping this dream alive. At its peak, maintaining Neverland cost a jaw-dropping $10 million a year. That's nearly $850,000 every single month. A staff of over 100 people worked around the clock, from zookeepers for the elephants and giraffes to ride operators and security guards. It was a massive operation, a private Disneyland for an audience of one and his chosen guests. You see, Michael wanted to create a world of childhood innocence he felt he never had. And from the outside, it looked like he succeeded. The images broadcast to the world were of smiling children, incredible parties, and a superstar who refused to grow up. But not all things are what they seem. For Paris Jackson, this place wasn't a headline or a fantasy. It was just home. But even for her, the daughter of the king, some doors remained closed. In recent emotional interviews, Paris has started to paint a different picture of Neverland. She speaks of a place that was both magical and isolating, a world where the lines between fantasy and reality were dangerously blurred. While thousands of photos exist of the train station, the zoo, and the rides, very few show what was inside the main residence. The nearly 13,000 square foot mansion was the true heart of Neverland, and it was the most fiercely guarded part of the entire property. This is where the fantasy ended and a strange hidden reality began. And at the center of it all was the mysterious upstairs, a forbidden zone that has been the subject of speculation for decades. Paris reveals that even as a child living there, she didn't truly know what was happening behind those closed doors. Why was this area so secret? What was being protected? The story gets even stranger when you learn about the secret passages and rooms built into the house itself. One of the most talked about secrets is a hidden room located off the master bedroom's walk-in closet. Officially, Jackson's former bodyguard has claimed this was just a panic room, a standard feature for a billionaire concerned about security. It makes sense, you see. Alarms would often go off from people trying to parachute onto the property. But others who worked at the ranch tell a different story. They whisper of it being a place to store valuables, a place to hide things away from prying eyes. This wasn't just a closet, it was a vault, hidden behind another door. What was so important that it had to be hidden so deeply within the heart of his private sanctuary? The questions only get deeper from here. What Paris saw and what she heard were two very different things. The real rules of Neverland. Many people are crazy about the idea of a secret-filled mansion, but at Neverland, it was reality. The main house wasn't just a home, it was a fortress of privacy. According to staff who worked there for years, the upstairs of the mansion was treated like a sacred off-limits area. It wasn't a place for guests. It wasn't even a place for most of the household staff. This was Micheal's personal domain. And according to Paris's fragmented recollections, it was a place of deep mystery. The energy up there was different. The rules were different. While downstairs was a place of loud fun and games, the upstairs was quiet, reserved, and intensely private. This is where the fairy tale narrative starts to feel a little off. Former employees have described the elaborate security measures inside the house itself. It wasn't just about keeping people out of the property, it was about controlling who moved within the walls. For instance, there were bells connected to the long hallway leading to the master suite. You couldn't approach Micheal's bedroom without him knowing you were coming. It gave him a warning, a few crucial moments to prepare for anyone's arrival. The question is, prepare for what? What was happening that required such a warning system inside his own home? Paris has spoken about her father's desire for privacy, but this seems to go beyond that. It suggests a need for absolute control. Staff members were given strict instructions. You do your job, and you do not question Mr. Jackson or his guests. They were not to interact with the children visiting the ranch unless absolutely necessary. He didn't want employees mixing with his little boyfriends, as one may describe them. This created a strange, intense atmosphere. On one hand, Neverland was presented as this open, loving place for children. On the other hand, a rigid, unspoken set of rules governed everything, creating a wall between the staff and the guests, and an even bigger wall around Micheal himself. The thing nobody tells you is how the architecture of the house itself may have been used. There was the main master bedroom, but there were other hidden sleeping spaces. One former staff member describes a steep staircase leading to a third-floor attic, a secluded spot where you could easily tell if someone was approaching. Other stories mention a hidden bedroom above the arcade and another in a castle structure within the theme park. These weren't just guest rooms, they were isolated hideaways, places where you could be completely alone, far from the main residence and the watchful eyes of the staff. For a man who craved privacy, he certainly built himself a lot of places to hide. For Paris, growing up in this environment must have been incredibly confusing. She was the princess of this kingdom, yet parts of her own castle were off limits. She was surrounded by laughter and fun, but also by secrets and whispers she couldn't understand. She has described her father as a loving, wonderful man. But she's also admitted that there's so much she didn't know, so much that was kept from her. Her recent willingness to speak hints at a woman trying to piece together the fragments of a very complicated puzzle. She is reconciling the loving father she knew with the controversial figure the world saw. But the secrets weren't just in the architecture, they were in the people. Sycamore Valley Ranch. You see, a storybook kingdom can't last forever, and for Neverland, the magic began to die in 2003. That was the year everything changed. 70 police officers descended on the ranch, executing a search warrant that turned Micheal's sanctuary into a scene of investigation. For him, this was the ultimate betrayal. The one place on Earth he had built as a shield from the outside world had been breached and, in his eyes, violated. He felt the property was poisoned, its innocence stolen forever. Shortly after, he left Neverland and made a solemn vow to never live there again. And just like that, the king abandoned his castle. The silence that followed was deafening. The laughter of children was replaced by the whistle of the wind through silent, motionless rides. The music that once blasted from speakers hidden in the landscaping faded. The $10 million a year fantasy was left to decay. For years, the property sat in a state of limbo. It became a ghost of its former self, a painful, sprawling monument to a dream that had turned into a nightmare. The vibrant colors of the amusement park faded under the harsh California sun. The famous floral clock at the entrance stopped ticking. The gardens became overgrown jungles, and the pools were drained, leaving behind cracked, empty basins. In 2008, the nightmare deepened as Micheal stood on the brink of losing it all. He defaulted on a massive $24.5 million loan, and the ranch, his personal paradise, faced the humiliation of a public foreclosure auction. To save it from being sold on the courthouse steps, he was forced into a deal. He had to transfer the title to a corporation called Colony Capital, effectively making himself a tenant in his own kingdom. The thing nobody tells you is that this wasn't just a paperwork shuffle, it was a devastating blow. A man who had total control over a 2,700-acre world was now a minority partner in his own home. After Micheal's passing a year later, the fate of Neverland was a global question. Millions of fans hoped it would be turned into a museum, a Graceland for the king of pop. They imagined it as a pilgrimage site where his legacy could be preserved forever. But the reality of that dream was a logistical and financial nightmare. The property's remote location in Santa Barbara County would have created massive traffic problems for the wealthy neighbors who would fight any zoning changes. The cost to bring the entire property up to public code, not to mention the insurance and upkeep, would have been astronomical. So the dream of a public museum died, and instead it was quietly put on the market. But who would want to buy such a place? It was one of the most famous properties in the world, yes, but it was also one of the most infamous. The name Neverland was now tied to so much controversy that its fame became a liability. To make it sellable, they tried to erase the ghost of Michael Jackson. The property was officially rebranded going back to its original generic name, Sycamore Valley Ranch. The amusement park rides were dismantled and hauled away. The zoo was long gone. They tried to turn it back into a regular luxury property, but you can't erase a legend. The ranch sat on the market for years. The initial asking price was a staggering $100 million, but there were no takers. The price was dropped to $67 million, and still it sat. Finally, in 2020, it sold for just $22 million. Think about that. That's less than the $35 million Micheal had spent on renovations alone decades earlier. The buyer was Ron Burkle, a billionaire businessman and a former friend of Michael's who said he saw it as a land banking opportunity. For a while, it seemed the story of Neverland was truly over. But then something strange happened. In 2023, photos emerged showing the fairy tale being resurrected. The train tracks were being repaired. The rides were being reinstalled and refurbished. Was Burkle trying to bring the magic back? The answer is even more complex. The ranch was being brought back to life to serve as a movie set for the upcoming Michael Jackson biopic. Hollywood was rebuilding the fantasy, brick by brick, to tell the story one more time. Now, as an adult, Paris Jackson has to watch her childhood home become a film set. A place of powerful and confusing memories is being turned into a backdrop where actors will pretend to be her family, reenacting their lives. This is the strange, cyclical life of a legend's child. The past can never really be escaped. This brings us to the final, most important question. As we look at all the strange facts, the police raids, the financial ruin, the bizarre sale, and the Hollywood resurrection, are we missing a key detail? Was the story of a simple sale to a friend just a convenient way to close a difficult chapter? Is the real truth of what happened to Neverland buried under layers of legal documents and non-disclosure agreements? Are we, the public, looking at this all wrong? What do you believe really happened behind those gates? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories you only thought you knew.